Hi everybody, welcome back to another Blogs for Beginners. This week we have the Lady Luck blog. For those of you that don't remember, Foxnext puts out a post every Friday afternoon, just kind of highlighting some of the things that are coming up over the next week or so. And I like to try and make a video each week describing how a lot of this stuff affects beginners, where people should be pushing, what they should know, things that might be confusing. So let's jump right in. So the first thing is that over the past few weeks, people were able to vote on different aspects of this game, and now the results are in, and they highlight that in this video here. It's pretty cool just to go back and see some of the ways the game has changed, different teams that have been updated, and different characters that used to be good, characters that have been good the whole time. So if you're interested, definitely check that out. If you have questions about how things have changed over time, definitely let me know, or stop by our Discord, and there's been a lot of other people that have been around for a while, so happy to talk to you about those things. The one thing that's kind of related to the game and upcoming is that X-Force was confirmed. In particular, Negasonic Teenage Warhead and X-23 were highlighted in that video. They also mentioned that Negasonic Teenage Warhead is going to be a milestone character. Now, there's been two different types of milestone events before. One is similar to the Symbiotic Spider-Man event that maybe some of you would have been a part of, where you just get shards by playing and using energy and spending gold and stuff like that. There's also been a more Blitz-oriented milestone event unlock release method. I think Ghost Rider and Namor released that way. So I don't know if it's been confirmed which one is going to be Negasonic Teenage Warhead. So the good news, I think both those are pretty friendly to beginners. A lot of times it just means you have to play a lot, or maybe be a little bit efficient with your resources, but hopefully both those are pretty decent. And then we also have Domino coming, and we have her full kit in this blog, so that's pretty exciting too. I like this team for beginners because there's already 2 characters in the game, so it's not like 5 new characters coming out, so you might already have some shards build up on Deadpool and Cable. You might have even put some gear into them depending on what you needed to use them for. So I think that right off the bat that helps beginners, but it's tough to tell with new characters and new teams how impactful it'll be for beginners. One, because we'll see how many stars these characters need to have before they're good, and what tier 4 orange abilities they need to have before they really start to get good. The other thing is this team's advertised as an Alliance War offense team, so we have to see how else they're useful outside of War, because I wouldn't recommend most beginners be working on an Alliance War offense team. In general, I would recommend people working on like Arena, Raid, Dark Dimension teams at the beginning, and then once they've kind of set themselves up well, then they can start to build their roster out a little bit more and do offensive teams and defensive teams. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this team and where they're usable outside of. But in general, it's just super exciting to have new characters. I think they look really cool. It sounds like they're talking about them being counter to Asgardians, which definitely would be really helpful to your alliance if you're able to get these built up. So I won't go too much into the details of the kit here or anything. There's some pretty neat stuff here, but like I said, a lot of it looks like it's War offense specific. She is going to be an event campaign, which is similar to the Taskmaster campaign that's ending right now. We will get the lucky trait after the next update. You'll be able to just filter in your roster and see who it is. Depending on who it is, this is a more beginner-friendly unlock. If it's really hard and has weird characters, like the Taskmaster event was a little bit difficult, I thought, for newer people, but depending on who it is, this can be a really great way to get people to a decent star level right off the bat. So hopefully that works out well for beginners. This is the part I'm really hype about. I think this is really cool news for everyone, really, but also for beginners. But Ghost Rider is going to be farmable. He is the 5th Supernatural member to become farmable. I've been waiting for this for a long time. There's a few reasons why. In general, for most beginner content, I don't like to recommend teams that have legendaries, because the legendary events are random. We don't know when they're going to happen. If you were to miss them, then you're waiting 3 to 4 months before that character comes back. So in general, I'm looking for teams that don't have legendaries when I'm looking at who to like try and take to Dark Dimension 1 and stuff like that. So this team doesn't have any legendaries, so they're all farmable now, and so that really opens up a lot of opportunities to see where this team could take beginners. They're good for arena. They can raid a little bit once they get built up a little bit. I think they would do really well in Dark Dimension 1. Some of them could be good for Dark Dimension 2, maybe not the whole team, but just in general, I think this team is going to be worth talking about over the next few weeks and seeing if there's some sort of place where beginners could transition into them. The other thing is, if you're not able to get the full Asgardians team, especially like Loki and Hela, then I think the Supernatural team is a really good option for the Mystic campaign. There's important characters at the end of the Mystic campaign like Loki, and actually Doctor Strange is in there too from the Supernatural team. And then Vision's also in the Mystic campaign. So if you can get to those nodes, then you can build your Asgardians a little bit earlier and things like that. So I think there's going to be a lot of awesome things about Ghost Rider being farmable now, and Cosmic 3-9 shouldn't be too difficult for people to get to. It's the very end of the Cosmic campaign, so it's not a team that I recommend going straight for, but I think we'll talk about, especially on the Discord, we'll probably talk about this a lot and see if there's some avenues where this could be a helpful team for people to build up. The downside of all of this is that we are going to lose a Jessica Jones node. It's not the end of the world. She's still going to have another one, but it means you're going to be farming her half the speed you were before if you were doing both nodes. So if you're planning on taking defenders to Dark Dimension 1 or anything like that, or building out for Block Party, it's just going to mean that you have to double your farm for her, and you might have to, if you're trying to rush, you might have to refresh her nodes like you were Iron Fist and Punisher and stuff like that. So definitely a downside, but in general, I think it's going to be a bigger deal that Ghost Rider is farmable now. The next thing they're doing is just a poll on what blitz we should do in honors of Father's Day. There's some pretty cool characters here. I think Mr. Fantastic is probably the flashiest of all these characters. Wouldn't surprise me if he won, just because he's just the newest of all these characters, and a lot of the existing players probably need him more than some of these other characters. But if a beginner had to choose between these to vote, I would choose either Sabretooth, Vulture, or Drax, because they're all for legendary events. In particular, I think my recommendation would be to vote for Sabretooth, since he's in the raid store. He's the hardest farm compared to like Vulture and Drax, who are both in the arena store. Overall, I think we'll end up with a pretty decent blitz out of these. If it was between Mr. Fantastic or Sabretooth, I think they're both pretty solid and worth going decent on for as a new person. The next is the legendary event for Phoenix/Dark Phoenix. This doesn't really apply to too many beginners, but it's worth knowing the restrictions for the event and just thinking about building them over time. It doesn't even say this here, so I think it's important to note you need to have these characters at 6-star for this event. It's a little bit different than any other legendary, and it's can be a point of confusion for a lot of people. So in particular, that makes it hard for beginners just because it takes so long to get people to 6-star. But he's one of the top characters in the game, so it's definitely worth thinking about. But again, you have to get to Loki's node first, so you either need like an Asgardian team or a Supernatural team, or like a combination of the two to get to that node. Mordo's arena, Nobu is pretty easy to farm. Ronin's in the raid store. Hela's node's pretty hard to get to, and Hand Assassin's not too bad. So either you need to get to Loki or Hela, and really you want to get to both, because you don't want to farm Nobu and Hand Assassin if you can avoid it. They're both pretty bad characters right now, so ideally you're only doing one of them and you're doing Loki and Hela. So that's why I think having the Supernatural team being farmable is going to be really important to get to that Loki node, so you can get to events like this. And then Black Bolt also requires Loki, so it's a big deal if you can get to Loki's node and start farming him. The exciting stuff, I think, really just keeps on coming in this blog. So we have 2 pretty solid blitzes, and I think they're both pretty decent for beginners too. Juggernaut's important. He can be used for the Magneto event, but he's also just a really good character. Magneto and Juggernaut can be used for Dark Dimension 2. They're really good on the Brotherhood 1.0 team with Sabretooth and Mystique, but they're also extremely good on the Brotherhood 2.0 team with Blob and Toad. So definitely worth going hard after this blitz, especially if you're level 42 and you can get red stars from it too. Definitely think it's worth using some of your blitz charges and spend a little bit of time in the game mode if you have it. And then the second blitz next week is going to be Falcon. Falcon is he doesn't unlock any legendaries, so he's not super important to beginners, but he can be really helpful in things like raids and even arena. I use Falcon a lot in arena to counter Phoenix, because his special not only gives you speed up, but it also clears stealth, so it can be pretty useful in like a situational thing. I think it's worth trying to unlock him and build him up a little bit, especially as we get Ironheart coming soon. So I think those are pretty exciting blitzes for new players. Last but not least, we got the double shard event for Black Panther and Okoye. I think I wouldn't worry too much about it unless you're already farming these characters. I don't think the Chaos Theory rewards are that good, especially at the low tiers, that you should prioritize this. Especially if it means you're not farming characters for legendaries or gear that you need. I would let these characters kind of build up passively. The first time event rewards are pretty good when you like first clear a certain level, but overall, getting like a tier 3 is not going to add up to that many promotion credits. So I wouldn't prioritize this too much or farming these characters too much. But if you're already farming them, then just make sure you're saving your farm until after this event is live and try and get use out of it for 2 days in a row. So there's a lot of cool stuff here. I'm excited to see. I think we're going to be talking about a few of these things for a while, trying to figure out how we can use these as beginners and things like that. So thanks everyone for watching. I hope you have a good weekend. Bye.